Nightmare Files.
We all know about the game called Among Us, but not everyone knew about it back in 2018. I downloaded the app back when it first came out, along with a few of my friends and some of their friends. We play a lot of games where it was just us and no one else. There was my friend Gianna, who would always invite this guy named Tyler, but I didn't know him and the rest of us didn't know him either. It went maybe a month of playing every day to every other day, but I couldn't stand that guy Tyler. He would always try to turn everyone against each other and would get mad that I call him out. So one day, I told everyone that I won't play with them again if Tyler continues to play. So everyone, including Gianna, chose to not play with Tyler anymore. That decision was made while we were in the middle of a game, and Tyler was voted out. Before he left, he said he'd see me around. We all laughed sarcastically and said that he's mad and he's a tough guy. The next day, I was just getting home from school like I usually do, and ate some food. My older brother had a basketball game because he played for the varsity team in our high school, so my family left me because I just wanted to stay home. As I were laying down in bed in my room, which is on the first floor near the back of the house, I heard my back fence move. I looked out of my window, and I saw that the light came on because it was dark by this time. I didn't see anything or anyone, so I continued watching TV and texting. I then began to doze off. The knock on my window immediately woke me up completely. I looked out the window, and standing there was some guy in a black Nike hoodie, black sweatpants with a pipe in his hand. The guy smiled at me and said, "Hey, I'm Tyler. What's up now?" He hit my window with the pipe, and it cracked the window, then ran to my back door. I called my parents and started to scream and yell. They were actually pulling up to the house from the game, getting ready to walk in. I ran out of the front door, and I'm guessing that guy ran away hopping my back fence. I called Gianna and asked her how he knew where I lived. She told me that he was actually her boyfriend from another school, and threatened her if she wouldn't give him my address. I've never been so afraid in my life. And I also never knew anyone could get that mad over video games. My name is Brent, and this happened when I was 11 years old, when I lived in a somewhat sketchy neighborhood. This took place on Halloween with a friend of mine named Carlos. Me and Carlos were best friends since the second grade, and there was a 2-story house rumored to be haunted near us. We decided that it would be a good idea to test out the rumor, which had seemed obviously fake to us at the time, or so we thought it had been fake. We went trick-or-treating and then left our candy at my friend Carlos's house. It was close to midnight, which was the time we intended to be at the house, to make things a little scarier due to the fact that we love horror movies. It took us a while to get to the house, as it was a few houses away, and it was the second to the last house on the street. As we arrived at the house at around 11:56, me and my friend Carlos then thought it would be a good idea to trick-or-treat here, so we rung the doorbell. A man which looked to be in his mid-30s, dressed with a hoodie and ripped jeans, answered the door almost right away. My friend then mentioned the rumor of his house being haunted. We laughed it out, and he used a poor excuse which we bought at the time, which was that he was a very messy and unorganized man. He then said, "You kids are almost a little late for Halloween. It's going to end in 2 minutes. It's almost 12 a.m. He said the candy was in the room and he offered us to come in. Us being really anxious at the time, took the offer to not be rude. We sat in the living room on the couch, waiting for the man as he went upstairs. Carlos's mom then texted him to ask if we were going to have a sleepover that night, which he replied with yes. As the man was coming back, he insisted on us going upstairs because he had Reese's, which was my favorite candy at the time. So me being a pretty mindless 11-year-old, I took the offer. As we went upstairs and into his hardly lit up room, it appeared as if the man collected knives. We saw it as a pretty cool hobby, and the man gave us each 2 Reese's chocolates. We then thanked the man, As we were going downstairs, my friend Carlos fell down the stairs screaming in pain. I turned around and the man was holding what appeared to be a red knife, which was probably one of the ones from his collection. My fight or flight was immediately activated and I punched the man in the face. He stabs my leg, but I managed to hold on in pain and knock him out with 5 punches. I take the knife out of my leg and start limping away holding Carlos, and we get out. I call the police and they arrest the man a while after he wakes up. The ambulance takes me and Carlos to the hospital. I was fine after 2 days, but Carlos was apparently stabbed twice in the back and was bleeding out. He took about a week or two in the hospital to recover. A while after getting out of the hospital, the police told us about the man's past. He was a registered sex offender. I never again went inside a stranger's house, and to this day I fear what could have happened if I was not able to hold on in pain from being stabbed. My name is Jack, and growing up, my younger brother and I, who's 2 years younger than me, had a complicated and somewhat difficult childhood. I won't go too much into details, private and personal, but there were a lot of occasions where my brother and I, whose name is Brian, would move around the country a lot and live with different relatives and sometimes friends. This one time, I think I was about 10 and Brian was 8. Our dad was driving us across the country for a reason I can't remember. I don't know what time it was, but I know it was dark and late. When we finally stopped for the night at a motel, it was even darker. After checking into our room, which was on the ground floor, our dad said he was leaving to do something and he'll be back soon. He said he'll bring back a pizza and told us to not leave the room. There was nothing to do in our room and we didn't know how to work the TV, so I suggested that we play hide and seek. Brian was to be the seeker. I left the room and ran upstairs to the floor above us, around the corner behind an ice machine, and waited. I had a clear view over the motel and could see Brian looking around for me. I remember standing behind the ice machine giggling and watching my brother walk around the motel in the pool area looking for me. Then the door behind me slowly creaked open, revealing a large man that looked to be in his late 40s. Had a dirty white tank top on, and he seemed overweight. He asked me in a friendly voice what I was doing. I told him I was just playing hide and seek. He then asked me if I was playing with my parents. I told him no, just my younger brother. At this point, Brian was upstairs and found me talking to the man. The man asked if our parents knew we were playing hide and seek. Brian spoke up and said no, our dad left us. The man then asked Brian and I if we wanted to come inside to watch cartoons, and he had some cookies and milkshakes for us as well. Me and Brian looked at each other and then looked back at the man and said, okay. And we entered the man's motel room. We sat down on the bed and the man turned the TV on and he put on some cartoons. I can't remember what cartoons it was though. He then said he would be right back and was going to get our milkshakes and cookies. The man went into the bathroom. I got up and I took a look into the bathroom to see what the man was doing. I was confused at why he didn't go in the kitchen. He had 2 glasses of water and then put a little bit of white powder in each glass. Thinking at the time it was just the ingredients to make a milkshake, I sat back down on the bed. When the man finally came out of the bathroom, he handed me and Brian a glass each. He said, "Here's your milkshakes." It didn't look like milkshakes at all. At least not one that I've ever had. It looked like it was just water with white powder floating around. I suddenly had this bad feeling in the pit of my stomach telling me I was definitely in danger and we needed to leave. Brian was about to take a sip of his drink. I stopped him and the man was still watching us, just silent. Out of nowhere, the man just asked us, "What's wrong? Drink your milkshake." This time in a much less friendlier tone than he had been speaking to us before. I looked at the man, and he was looking at me, waiting for me to speak. I then said, "We always eat cookies first before we drink our milkshakes." The man let out an irritated sigh and went back into the bathroom. I put the glass down on the floor and quietly did the same with Brian's. I grabbed Brian's arm and quickly exited the man's room. We ran around the corner and down the stairs into our motel room. I turned out the lights and I kept watch out the window. After about 5 minutes, the man came down the stairs and started his car. I was feeling a bit of a relief, thinking he was just about to leave the motel. But he got out of the car and looked directly at the window I was looking through and started approaching our room. I remember panicking at the moment, thinking that the man was about to take us. He was getting closer to our door when our dad pulled up and asked the guy what he was doing. The man didn't say anything and just walked away and went to his car and drove off. We never saw him again. When our dad asked us who that man was, we told him we didn't know. Brian and I never spoke about this incident again to anyone. I sometimes have nightmares about if we did drink that man's drink and what would have happened to us if we did, or if our dad didn't come back in time. This happened 2 years ago. My name is James, and my girlfriend at the time was Susie. Susie and I got into an argument about a girl who was just texting me about the edibles. The girl just wanted to know who had edibles and the prices on them. I remember I used the bathroom, and after I came back to the living room, I saw Susie on my phone and she looked angry. She started asking questions about the girl. Regular questions. Am I cheating on her? Is she pretty? The most disturbing one was, if she was right here, right now, would I kiss her or my girlfriend? That was the PG version of what she really asked. I told her she texted me about edibles, and besides that, the girl doesn't even like guys. But I don't think my girlfriend knew that. So we continued to argue for about 20 minutes. I started to say this is stupid, and I remember looking at the clock and it was 11 p.m. Since she was staying over that night, I told her we should just stop fighting and try to get some sleep or watch a movie. We agreed and turned on a movie. We were watching Don't Be a Menace in South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. As we were watching the movie, I noticed she was on her phone typing fast and just really involved in her phone. Every time I leaned in a little closer to see what was going on, she would always move her phone away and just give me a cold shoulder. We continued watching the movie until I heard somebody at my door. I said, I wonder who that could be at this time. Again, I looked at the clock, and now it was 1 a.m. My mom was in her room asleep, but after she heard the doorbell, she woke up asking who that was. I told her I didn't know, but I was going to find out. So as I started going to the door, I heard whispering from my girlfriend, like she was on the phone or something. I didn't really pay attention to it, so I finally got to the door and I looked through the peephole. I was met with some tall dude, wearing mostly all black. I talked to him through the door, and I asked him, what do you want? He replies with, I'm just here to drop off a package. Sorry I'm late. And I was thinking, who delivers a package at 1 a.m? So I told him to leave, and he could come back some other time to deliver the package. He said no, in a deep, commanding voice. Just in that moment, my ex-girlfriend Susie comes walking towards me with a grin on her face. She says to me, so you're really not going to tell me who that girl was texting you? I explained that she wasn't anybody, and I didn't know her like that. And this is the wrong time to be asking me a question like that when there's somebody at the door I didn't know. Till this day, what she said still gives me the chills just thinking about it. She said, the guy at the door, he's here to get rid of you. At first, I gave out a nervous laugh and said, that's not funny. She said, yeah, it is. Well, at least for me it is. As this was going on, the guy at the door kept messing with the door handle, trying to get in. So I was leaning up against the door, preventing him to come in. As I looked behind me, Susie was gone. A few seconds later, she comes back with a knife and said, either he's going to get you or I will. I started flipping out and thinking, what am I going to do? I can't die right here. Just in that moment, I heard a commanding voice saying, back away from the door or we'll shoot. I thought to myself, what the fuck? So I swung open the door, and there was the police. One of the police officers told Susie to drop the knife because when I took my eyes off of her and I opened the door, she was right behind me, like literally right behind me. But the officer saying that must have scared her, and she dropped the knife immediately. Apparently, while all this was going on, My mom called the cops and explained the situation the best she could. She pretended to be asleep so she wouldn't cause attention to herself and could get help as fast as she could. The police arrested both of them and took them to the station. Apparently the guy that was there was her cousin. And the whole time the movie was playing, she was texting him, telling him to come over and quote unquote, deal with me. I'm just happy that I'm still here today. My mom saved my life. I don't even want to imagine what they would have done with me. I'm 23 years old and have recently landed myself an intern job working in the office of the city that I moved to. It hasn't been as good as I thought it would be. My boss and other managers always drop extra work on me, and I usually end up staying in the office way later than everyone else, when everyone else has already gone home. This one Thursday was no different. I was stuck in the office past 11 p.m. It was on a Zoom business call with people who were across the country, and some were across the world. There weren't many people on the Zoom call. It was about 4 people, not including myself. I looked up from my desk and I took a look at the Zoom call. 3 of the 4 people were guys I knew. They were from the same company across town. The other caller I didn't know. But on a Zoom call, you can get dozens of people on the call at once. I don't always know everyone, so I didn't think much about it. The 4th person I didn't recognize was in an office that was dark, but there was no doubt that there was someone on the call. I could see them sitting down in a dingy office, but I couldn't make out any features whatsoever. One of my coworkers left the call, and then I asked the remaining 2 who the other person was. They both said it was probably someone. I won't say the name, obviously, but they had just gone to make coffee or something. The 2 coworkers then signed off, and it was just me and the other person on the call. As my coworkers said, they probably just went to make coffee. So I got my head down, and I carried on with my work. After about 10 minutes, I got up to use the bathroom, and I got myself a coffee. As I was pouring myself a mug, I heard something tip over on one of the nearby offices. It sounded like a stack of paper falling. I called out, "Hello?" I was startled, yeah, but I wasn't completely terrified. I assumed I was there alone. But this is a massive office building. There are plenty of people who could be here working late. When I got back to my desk, I took a look at the Zoom call. That's when I got freaked out. The one person who was still on the call had stuck a piece of paper on his computer camera and said hello, with 3 dots next to it. I typed in the chat box, "Who's the person on the call?" Unsurprisingly, there was no response, and then the Zoom call ended. I was pretty scared and felt like going home and just taking my work with me. As I was packing up my stuff, I received a phone call. I answered it and said hello. There was no answer, but there was definitely someone on the line. I could just tell by the noises, and I could hear light breathing as well. I spoke again saying, "Hello, who's this?" That's when the phone went dead. I put the phone down and sped walked to the elevator. Once stepping inside the elevator and pressing the bottom floor button, a light turned on in an office down the corridor, and I heard a door slam shut. Right before the elevator closed, this all happened. That was the last weird thing that happened to me that night. It was the creepiest experience I've ever had. Unfortunately, I still have to stay late, and I'm always paranoid of who's around me, and I never feel alone when working late there. My name is Paul. I play a lot of video games with my group of friends. Recently, we've been playing Among Us most nights. Every time my friends and I play video games together, we always used our mics, and a lot of times, we just trolled other players. We were playing Among Us and had a lot of discussions about who the killers could be. Me and my 2 friends, whose names were Harry and Wayne, thought it was the guy named Sean, and so did the rest of the lobby. We eventually voted him to be ejected. During the discussions, Sean was getting more and more aggressive, insisting it wasn't him who was the killer. And me and my 2 friends actually found it quite funny. After the game, Harry had received a message from a guy named Sean saying he wasn't the killer, and we shouldn't have ejected him, and so on. Wayne thought it would be funny to invite Sean into our lobby to troll him the whole game, and tell the rest of the players in the discussion that we think Sean's the killer. so that's what we did. We played the 2 games with the Sean guy, each time trolling him and saying that he was the killer and getting him ejected. Sean eventually left our lobby, and we didn't play with him again that night. I'm a light sleeper and wake up to the slightest of sounds. I woke up around 2 a.m. by the sound of a car. I looked out my window and I saw a car parked just outside my house. The car was still running, but no one got out, no one got in the car. I looked around and saw my street to be empty. Just before trying to go back to sleep, my computer started up. I went over to my computer and there was a blue screen. In the middle of the blue screen was an icon that said, "Open for discussion." I clicked on it and it revealed a very gory photo of a man who was cut in half, and underneath was written, "You have been ejected." I tried to move the mouse and turn off my computer, but it didn't work. The only thing to do was to look at the gruesome photo. My computer did turn off eventually, and as soon as it did, that car that was outside my house slowly drove off. The next day I woke up and saw a text from my friends Harry and Wayne, and they both said they had similar experiences, that they received weird pictures on the computer and phones, pictures of people cut in half. I asked them both if they think it was something to do with that guy we were trolling. They both didn't know what to think. I thought that Sean guy somehow found out where we lived and hacked our devices. What scares me is how real the photos were, and how he knew where me and my friends lived and was able to hack our devices so easily. Years ago, when I was 5 going on 6, I dressed up as Pennywise the Clown for Halloween. I wore the costume all day due to my school letting us wear them for parties in our classes. When we were dismissed from school, my father met me with a pleasant surprise. He was dressed in a yellow raincoat and had a hat on, and he was Georgie from the movie It. He held my hand as we went to the car, then we drove home. A few hours go by, and my father took me out to go trick-or-treating because my mother wasn't feeling too well. The night went on as scheduled, kids bombarding doors for candy, teenagers scaring each other, and parents losing their kids. Everyone loved our costumes. Again, I was Pennywise the Clown and he was Georgie from the 1990 It. My father held my hand in between each house and waited at the end of each driveway. One house took longer than others, and I remember that I was very anxious. Once I received my candy, I remember that there were more people than usual, and I had to run through a crowd to get to my father. I reached him, held his hand, and off we went, but it was the opposite direction of where we initially were going. I didn't think anything of it because of how young I was. We went down one of the dark back streets where our garbage was picked up for some reason, and we were walking unusually fast. I remember that I said, "Daddy," but my father started moving faster and didn't answer me. Then all of a sudden, I heard my name yelled out from about 25 yards behind us, and it was my father's voice. I looked back and it was my father. I looked up at the person that I was walking with, and he had on the same costume as my dad, but when I looked closer, I noticed it wasn't him. I looked at my dad and yelled out to him. The man then let me go, and as soon as he saw my father, he started running, and my father was running full speed at us. The man took off down the alley, then through a backyard. My father reached me and he was out of breath while he was hugging and kissing me, also asking me if I was okay. My father called the cops and explained to them that he lost track of me in a huge crowd at one of the houses and that there was some sick guy roaming our neighborhood. Once we got home, he told my mother everything that happened. He told her that a crowd gathered and some random guy with some costume the same as him walked up to him while I approached the porch. He told her that the guy said I was a cute kid. They wanted to just snatch me up in a joking manner. Then the crowd gathered even more, and he lost track of me until he saw us turn the corner onto the back street, and that's when he started to run after us and yell my name. Now looking back, I bet my father was losing his mind and probably wanted to kill that guy when he saw us together. Until this day, I'm grateful that my father found us when he did, because who knows what would have happened to me. One evening, I was looking for an internet cafe because I needed to send a few emails. I spotted one in an old building. The sign said it was on the 6th floor. When I walked through the entrance, there was a dark hallway that led to a small elevator. I pressed the call button, and when the doors opened, I stepped inside. In a lot of Asian countries, many buildings do not have a 4th floor. The number 4 is considered bad luck because the word 4 sounds almost the same as the word for death. When it stopped and the doors opened, I was about to step out when I realized that something was wrong. The hallway was in total darkness. By the light emanting from the elevator, I could make out a random piece of furniture covered with white cloth. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I thought I might have gotten off on the wrong floor, so I checked the buttons, but none of them were lit up. There was nothing to indicate which floor I was on. Just then, I noticed something moving at the end of the darkened hallway. I couldn't quite make out what it was, but it looked like a person dressed in some type of gown. The figure was moving slowly down the hallway towards the elevator. It creeped me out, and in a panic, I started pressing the closed door button. All of a sudden, the light in the elevator flickered and turned off. I was plunged into the pitch darkness. I was so freaked out I almost wet myself. Just as I was about to lose it completely, the lights flickered back on. The doors closed. The elevator jolted back to life and began to ascend again. I breathed a sigh of relief. When the doors opened this time, I was at the internet cafe. I went over to the counter and told the girl who worked there and what had happened. As she listened, her face grew pale. She said that some of the customers and a few of her co-workers had experienced the same thing. She had never experienced anything herself, but she told me about the history of the building. Apparently, the 4th floor had been a hair salon at one time. It was prospering and doing pretty good until one of the women who worked there killed herself in the salon. Nobody knew the reason why. The salon continued to operate, but they were plagued by weird and inexplainable events. Sometimes when customers were having their hair washed, the water would turn as red as blood. Other people claimed that when they looked in the mirror, they would catch glimpses of a ghostly figure standing behind them. When they turned around, there would be no one there. Because of these events, the salon developed a bad reputation and began to lose customers. Eventually, they were forced to close down. The building's owner tried to rent the 4th floor out to other businesses, but when they found out what had happened, nobody would take it. Finally, the owner reduced the price to nearly nothing, and it was rented by a businessman who planned to open a stationery supply store. However, when they tried to do some renovations on the floor, there was a series of mysterious accidents. The workmen's tools would sometimes disappear, only to be found in strange places. A large mirror suddenly shattered when nobody was near it, and the workman had his hand crushed when the elevator closed unexpectedly. Eventually, the workmen were so spooked that they refused to continue. The building's owner gave up trying to rent the 4th floor out and just shut it down. He had the buttons in the elevator replaced, and it was reprogrammed that nobody could go on the 4th floor. At least that's what's supposed to happen. For some reason, when people took the elevator, it would sometimes stop on the 4th floor, and when the doors opened, some people would see a figure coming toward them in the darkness. I honestly still don't know what that was. I grew up in a very small town in Montana. During Halloween one year, my brother and I sold lemonade by the side of the road because it was unusually hot that year. We didn't make a lot of money, but we did have a lot of fun selling lemonade to people who were passing by. So my brother and I were standing at our lemonade stand when we noticed an old rusty car pass by us. 2 or 3 times. At the time, it struck me as a little creepy. Eventually, the car slowed down and stopped right in front of the stand. There was a woman in the passenger seat, and she rolled her window down. I saw she was really skinny with gray hair, and it was stained and silky. It looked like it was nasty, honestly. I couldn't see the man who was driving very well because he never looked at me. He just stared straight ahead. Both of them seemed very odd, and their clothes were old and dirty. The lady smiled. "You boys out here selling lemonade all by yourselves?" asked the woman. "Yeah, my mom lets us," I replied. "Is your mom home?" she asked. "Yeah, she's in the house," I said. The woman turned and looked at the man who was driving. He nodded, still staring straight ahead. The woman turned back to me and said, "Okay, I'll have some lemonade." "That'll be 25 cents, I said as I poured her glass. She rummaged around in her purse, and I could hear coins clinking. Then she pulled out a $5 bill and held it to me. A chill went down my spine. Why was she handing me a $5 bill if she had coins in her purse? Something just didn't feel right. So I lied and said I don't have any change. She said, "You can keep the change. Just come and take the $5. Something felt very wrong, but $5 was a lot to me at the time. I walked up to the car and reached out to take the $5 from her hand. As soon as my fingers touched it, the woman suddenly grabbed me by my wrist and began pulling me into the car. I screamed so loud, my brother ran to the house yelling for help. The man floored the accelerator, and the car lurched forward. I fought with all my might and managed to wrench myself free from her grasp. The car stopped, and the man got out, but I was already running for my life. My brother was pounding on the door and screaming. My mother rushed out and turned just in time to see the rusty old car speeding away. We told my mom what had happened, and she called the police. When my brother and I calmed down and went back to the lemonade stand, there was a $5 bill lying on the ground. We packed up the lemonade stand and put it away for good. When I was 11 years old, I spent the night hanging out with my closest friend at the time. I left around 7 o'clock. He was about 15 to 20-minute walk away from my house. It was the month of December, so it was icy and dark outside. While I was walking down the long sidewalk, I had to make a turn halfway. Across the turn down the sidewalk, I noticed a man way further down. He was alone at the moment. 10 seconds later, a 4-door car drove up to him. It was a long street till my turn, so I watched him talk to whoever it was in the car. It sped off, and he just stopped, watching me as I walked. As I kept walking, all I heard was, "Hey you, come here, stop, hey you." So I freaked out. I started walking faster and then noticed he started running toward me. I started running for my life. Since the ground was covered in snow and ice, all I literally thought was, "Please, God, don't let me slip." I was crying, and I was running. He caught up extremely fast. I kept looking back and noticed the car slowly driving behind him. As I ran, I felt his arm reach out and try to grab the hood of my sweatshirt. By God's grace, his hand slipped, and I ran a block trying to find a house with the lights on. I finally found one and banged at the door, almost ready to break it down. This older couple finally answered, and I ran inside explaining what happened. The husband then went outside to try to find him. When he went out, he saw the man standing at the end of the street staring at him. Then he ran off. My mom called the police and pulled me out of school for 4 days afterward, and this guy was never found. For a while after, I would buy flowers and a card and leave it on the couple's step, thanking them for saving my life. God only knows what would have happened if he got me and dragged me to the car.
Nightmare Files.